From the outside, it looked like a dream childhood. A small boy sitting in front of a shiny black piano, his fingers dancing across the keys with surprising confidence. The music flowed so smoothly that even grown musicians were left speechless. Every note seemed to have emotion. Every pause seemed intentional. People in the audience whispered to one another, amazed. They couldn't believe that someone so young could play like that. That boy was Ethan Park. At just 4 years old, he had already been called a piano prodigy. His performances were being shared online by proud parents, local reporters, and anyone who loved seeing raw talent in children. Videos of him playing classical pieces reached thousands of views in a few days. People wrote comments like, "He's born with a gift," or "a real genius in the making." But behind all the applause and admiration, there was a story most people didn't see. What looked like natural talent was actually built on long hours of practice, a strict routine, and a kind of pressure that most adults would find difficult to handle. Ethan didn't grow up in a normal home. His days were not filled with toys, cartoons, or playdates. Instead, his world revolved around one thing: the piano. Ethan's mother had once been a pianist herself. She had big dreams when she was young, dreams of performing in grand concert halls and traveling the world. But life took a different turn. She got married, had a family, and slowly gave up on those dreams. When Ethan was born, she saw something in him, a chance to live that dream again through her son. When Ethan was 3, his mother noticed that he could remember melodies after hearing them only once. One evening, she played a simple tune on the piano, and the next morning, Ethan sat beside her and played the same tune almost perfectly. She was shocked. That tiny spark of natural talent was enough to change the course of his childhood. From that day on, she became determined to help him reach his potential. It started gently. She sat with him for half an hour each day, showing him the notes, clapping along to the rhythm, and praising him for every small improvement. Ethan enjoyed it at first. It was fun. He liked the attention, the claps, and the way his mother's face lit up when he played correctly. But soon things began to change. Half an hour became 2 hours, then 4, and eventually, almost the entire day. Ethan's mother created a schedule: practice in the morning, break for lunch, then practice again until dinner. She said that great musicians were made through discipline, not luck. Ethan's father supported it too. He bought recording equipment and set up a small camera near the piano to capture every session. He said they should document his journey so people could see how special Ethan was. At first, the videos were innocent, a little boy trying his best, sometimes missing notes, sometimes giggling mid-song. But as the audience online grew, the tone changed. People expected perfection. His mother started editing the videos before posting them, trimming out the mistakes and polishing the sound. Soon the world saw only the flawless side of Ethan, the side that looked effortless, magical, and gifted. Ethan's family began receiving invitations from schools, music teachers, and even local TV shows. Everyone wanted to meet the little prodigy. Each appearance brought more praise and more pressure. Every time he played, people told him how amazing he was. But inside, Ethan started to feel confused. He didn't know if he was playing because he loved it, or because everyone expected him to. There were moments when he wanted to stop and just be a regular kid. Sometimes he'd look out the window while practicing and see other children running outside, laughing, chasing each other in the park. He wondered what that felt like, to be free, to play without worrying about missing a note. But his mother would call from the kitchen, reminding him to stay focused. "1 more hour," she'd say. "Just 1 more, and then you can rest." That 1 more hour often turned into 3. His mother kept telling him that talent was nothing without hard work. And in a way, she was right. Ethan's playing did improve rapidly. By the time he was 6, he could play pieces that most teenagers found difficult. His fingers moved with the precision of someone much older. Audiences couldn't believe what they were seeing. But while his hands grew stronger, his smile started to fade. Ethan rarely talked to other children. He didn't go to birthday parties or sleepovers. He barely had friends. His life was divided into lessons, practice, and performances. Every night before sleeping, he'd hear the sound of the piano in his mind, repeating like an echo that wouldn't stop. Sometimes he'd wake up and feel like he was still sitting at the piano, even though he was in bed. One afternoon, during a small concert, something unexpected happened. Ethan sat down to play, but his hands froze. He had played that song hundreds of times before, but at that moment he couldn't remember the first note. The audience waited silently. His heart pounded. He looked at his mother in the front row. Her eyes were sharp, urging him to start. He forced himself to play, but his hands trembled and a few notes sounded wrong. When he finished, the applause came, but it felt empty. He couldn't even look up. After the show, his mother didn't speak. The car ride home was quiet. Later that night, she told him that if he wanted to be great, he couldn't let nerves control him. "Pressure makes diamonds," she said softly, but her words felt heavy. Ethan nodded, but deep down he just wanted someone to tell him it was okay to be scared. As months passed, the family's focus on Ethan's gift only grew. His father began managing his social media accounts, responding to messages and arranging more performances. Reporters came to their home for interviews. They called Ethan a once-in-a-generation talent. One magazine even wrote that he could be the next Mozart. Ethan's videos started to go viral. One clip where he played Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata received millions of views in a week. The camera showed him sitting on a tall piano bench, his feet barely reaching the pedals, eyes closed, completely lost in the music. People loved it. But what they didn't see was the hours of practice behind that one video. The tears, the frustration, the endless takes until his mother thought it was perfect. He didn't hate the piano. In fact, part of him still loved the sound it made. But he began to feel trapped by it, like the piano was both his best friend and his cage. Every note he played felt like a promise he had to keep, not a song he wanted to share. One evening, his grandmother visited. She hadn't seen Ethan in months. When she arrived, he was practicing as always. She stood by the door quietly, listening. After he finished, she clapped and smiled gently. "You play beautifully," she said. "But tell me, do you enjoy it?" Ethan looked down at the keys, unsure how to answer. He wanted to say yes, that he loved it, but the words didn't come out. His grandmother didn't push him. She just hugged him and said, "Music should make you feel alive, not tired." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what she said. He realized he couldn't remember the last time he had played just for fun. Every song had become a test. Every performance a judgment. Still, the next morning, the piano was waiting for him, and so was his schedule. He sat down, placed his fingers on the keys, and began again, because that was what everyone expected of him. Outside, the world saw a boy who was destined for greatness. Inside, there was a child trying to figure out whether he was really special, or just trained to look that way. The truth was, Ethan didn't fully understand what prodigy even meant. He only knew that it was a word people used when they looked at him with admiration or envy. He heard adults whispering that some kids were born different, that some just had it. But in his small heart, he wondered if what they called it was really just endless hours of practice and a little bit of fear, and that question, the quiet doubt growing inside him, would one day become the key to uncovering what so many people refuse to see about child prodigies. Because, behind every story of a genius child, there's often another story, one about parents, pressure, and the price of perfection. For now, Ethan kept playing, unaware that his journey, which began with simple joy and family pride, was slowly turning into something much more complicated. Something that would eventually make the world question what authentic talent really means. Ethan's days began before the sun came up. While most children his age were still asleep, he was already sitting at the piano, rubbing his sleepy eyes and stretching his small fingers. His mother believed mornings were the best time for focus. She said the mind was fresh and quiet, the world still calm, and music could settle into the heart more deeply then. Every morning followed the same pattern. Warm-up exercises first, slow scales up and down again and again until his hands moved smoothly. Then came arpeggios, finger drills, and memory work. After that, he practiced difficult pieces, sometimes repeating the same page over and over until it was perfect. It wasn't unusual for him to play one passage 50 times in a row. At first, Ethan thought this was normal. He believed all kids practiced like this. His mother often told him stories of great musicians who trained endlessly, who gave up everything to become legends. "You must learn to love discipline," she said gently, watching him from the sofa with a notebook in hand, taking notes on every mistake. Sometimes she smiled proudly, other times she sighed in disappointment. Ethan lived for those smiles. They made him feel like he was doing something right, something special. But those sighs, they made him shrink inside like a small plant wilting under a cold wind. As months turned into years, his schedule became stricter. His mother called it the method. It wasn't written down anywhere, but every moment of the day was planned. Practice in the morning, study in the afternoon, more practice in the evening. Meals were short, breaks were rare, and weekends didn't exist in their home. Ethan's father had turned their living room into a mini recording studio. There were cameras, lights, and a microphone set up near the piano. He said it was to capture progress, but it also meant Ethan was always performing. Even when he practiced alone, he felt watched. The little red light on the camera became part of his world, blinking at him like an unblinking eye that never turned away. Every week, his parents posted new videos online. His father would edit them late into the night, trimming out moments of hesitation, adjusting sound levels, sometimes mixing in clearer audio from previous takes. He wanted each video to look perfect and no slips, no wrong notes, no signs of effort. People love seeing perfection, he would say proudly. The videos went viral fast. Millions of people watched Ethan play classical masterpieces with calm confidence. His tiny hands looked magical on the keys. People commented things like, "He's born for this," and such natural talent. The world saw an effortless genius. No one saw the exhaustion hiding behind those calm eyes. Ethan's mother often read the comments aloud to him, smiling. "See, they love you. You inspire people." Ethan nodded quietly. He wanted to be proud, but something didn't feel right. He knew how much work went into every video. He knew how many times he cried out of frustration, how many hours it took to fix the smallest mistake. The world saw magic, but he saw muscle memory and repetition. One evening, while recording, Ethan accidentally hit the wrong note in the middle of a difficult piece. He froze, expecting his mother to stop him, but she didn't. She just said softly, "Again." He started over. After 10 tries, his fingers were shaking. After 20, his shoulders ached. By the 40th attempt, tears welled in his eyes. "Can we stop for now?" he asked quietly. His mother hesitated. Then she smiled faintly and said, "Okay, one last time. You're almost there." He played again, forcing his hands to stay steady. This time it was perfect. His mother clapped and hugged him. "See?" she said. "Hard work always wins." Ethan smiled weakly, but deep inside something small began to break. Over time, the line between practice and real life blurred. Music wasn't just something he did. It became who he was expected to be. If he wasn't playing, he felt guilty. If he rested, he felt lazy. The piano became both his comfort and his burden. Still, he tried to believe in what his parents said. They told him he was special, that he had a gift, that he was lucky to know his purpose so young. His mother reminded him that most kids wasted time watching cartoons while he was creating beauty. "One day the world will thank you," she said. At school, Ethan was quiet. His classmates admired him but didn't really understand him. They asked how he learned to play so well, but when he said he practiced 6 hours a day, they laughed like it was a joke. Some even teased him, calling him robot hands because he always skipped playtime to go home and practice. During lunch breaks, he sometimes sat alone, drawing pianos on the corners of his notebooks. The teachers praised him constantly, showing his videos to the class. "You should all learn from Ethan's dedication," they'd say. The other students clapped politely, but Ethan could feel their distance. He didn't blame them. He didn't feel like one of them anymore. At home, his parents were busy planning his future. They started talking about music competitions, TV appearances, and maybe even a concert tour one day. His father said they needed to build his brand. His mother began working on a new program of pieces for him to learn. Harder, longer, more impressive. They wanted to prove that he wasn't just a lucky child with talent. He was a true prodigy. And so, the method became even more intense. They introduced mental training. His mother taught him breathing exercises to stay calm, memory drills to remember long pieces, and visualization, imagining himself playing in big halls before falling asleep. She said every great performer did it. His father played recordings of famous pianists in the background while Ethan ate breakfast, hoping the music would sink in subconsciously. Every detail of his life revolved around becoming better. His diet changed to brain-boosting foods. His bedtime was adjusted for optimal creativity. Even his playtime was replaced with ear-training games and rhythm challenges. The more his parents shaped him, the more the world praised him. Magazines called him a living miracle. A famous pianist even mentioned him in an interview, saying, "This boy is the future of music." That quote became the headline of their next video. But deep down, Ethan didn't feel like the future of anything. He felt like a boy trapped in a routine that never stopped. Sometimes, late at night, he'd sneak out of bed and walk to the piano in the dark. He'd play quietly, not the pieces he was told to, but the ones he liked. Simple, soft melodies that didn't demand perfection. He'd play until he felt calm again, then return to bed before anyone noticed. Those secret moments were his only reminders that music could still be beautiful, not just hard work. One afternoon, after another long practice, his father showed him a new video that was about to go online. Ethan watched himself on the screen. Perfect posture, flawless timing, confident smile. But he barely recognized the boy in the video. It didn't feel like him. "Do I really look like that when I play?" he asked quietly. His father nodded proudly. "You look like a professional," he said. Ethan didn't respond. He wanted to say that the video wasn't the truth, that behind the smile he'd been exhausted, that it took over 20 takes, that his hands had started hurting by the end. But he stayed silent. His parents were proud. The world was amazed. Who was he to ruin that? The method was working, at least from the outside. But on the inside, something was changing. The joy he once felt while playing was slowly fading. The sound of the piano no longer filled him with excitement. It started to sound like an endless list of expectations. Still, he kept going. Because he didn't want to disappoint anyone. Because every time he thought about stopping, he pictured his mother's face. Proud, hopeful, maybe even happy for the first time in years. He didn't want to take that away from her. As his 8th birthday approached, his parents announced that they had arranged a big recital. It would be his biggest audience yet. Hundreds of people, including reporters and critics. They said it would be the event that proved to everyone that he was truly gifted. Ethan nodded politely. But when he went to his room that night, he sat on the floor looking at his small hands. He whispered to himself, "Do I really love this?" He didn't have an answer. All he knew was that the piano, once his favorite thing in the world, now felt like a mirror reflecting everyone else's dreams except his own. And as the date of the recital drew closer, that quiet doubt in his heart began to grow louder, though no one around him seemed to hear it. The day of the big recital arrived faster than Ethan expected. The entire week before had felt like a blur of practice, rehearsals, and more practice. His mother had pushed him to perfect every small detail, from his posture to the way he bowed at the end of a piece. His father adjusted the lights and tested the camera angles to record the whole event. The living room was filled with sheet music, wires, and the constant sound of the metronome ticking like a clock that never stopped. Ethan barely slept the night before. He lay awake staring at the ceiling, his hands resting on his chest, feeling the faint ache from the hours of practice. He wasn't nervous about playing, at least that's what he told himself, but something in his chest felt heavy. It wasn't fear of making a mistake. It was something deeper, like the feeling of carrying a weight that wasn't his to bear. That morning, his mother woke him early. "Big day," she said cheerfully, trying to sound relaxed, though her eyes looked tired. She had barely slept too. She helped him put on his small black suit, combed his hair, and adjusted his bow tie. His father paced around with his phone, answering calls from the event organizers and reporters. Everyone was busy. Everyone was excited. Ethan sat quietly at the piano one last time before they left. He touched the keys softly and played a few notes from one of his favorite songs. Not one of the classical ones, but something simple and warm. It made him feel calm for a moment. Then his mother came in. "Not that one, sweetheart," she said gently. "Save your energy for the real performance." At the concert hall, everything looked big and bright. The stage lights were stronger than he expected, and the seats stretched far back into the darkness. Dozens of people were already arriving, families, reporters, and even a few local music critics. There were posters with his picture and the words, "Ethan Park, the young piano genius." Seeing his own face like that made his stomach twist a little. Backstage, his mother checked every detail again. She straightened his jacket and whispered, "You know the pieces. You've worked so hard. Just do what you always do." His father patted his shoulder and smiled proudly. "Everyone's waiting to see you," he said. Ethan nodded, but inside his heart was pounding. When it was finally his turn, he walked onto the stage. The applause was loud, much louder than he expected. For a moment he stood there frozen, staring at the sea of faces. The lights blinded him, and he could barely see the crowd anymore. He sat down, placed his fingers on the keys, and took a deep breath. The first piece began smoothly. His fingers remembered the notes even when his mind felt blank. Each movement was automatic, drilled into his memory from hours and hours of practice. The audience listened silently, mesmerized by the small boy who played with the confidence of an adult. Halfway through the performance, something shifted. A small mistake, barely noticeable, threw him off. His left hand landed slightly late on one chord. It was tiny, something most people wouldn't have heard, but Ethan felt it immediately. His heart skipped. His breathing quickened. He tried to focus, but his thoughts started racing. What if they noticed? What if Mom looks disappointed? What if the reporters think I'm not really good enough? His hands began to tremble slightly. The next few notes felt harder to reach. He forced himself to continue, repeating the words his mother always told him. Keep going no matter what. When the last note of the song finally echoed through the hall, the audience erupted in applause. Ethan smiled weakly, bowing just as he had practiced, but inside he felt drained. He still had 2 more pieces to play. As he started the second one, his mind drifted for a moment. The bright lights made it hard to focus. The air felt warm, almost too heavy to breathe. He could feel sweat on his palms. His fingers slipped slightly, missing another note. His chest tightened. He wanted to stop just for a moment, to take a deep breath, but he couldn't. His mother was watching from the front row. Even from the stage, he could feel her eyes on him, encouraging yet firm. His father had the camera raised, recording everything. There was no way to pause now, so he kept going. By the time he finished the third piece, his heart was racing so fast it almost hurt. The crowd cheered again, but their clapping felt far away, like a sound coming from a different world. He bowed once more, stood up, and walked backstage. The moment he stepped out of sight, he felt his legs shake. He sat down on a small chair and covered his face with his hands. He wasn't crying, but his eyes burned. He felt a strange emptiness. He had done everything right, yet it didn't feel like victory. It felt like relief, like finally reaching the end of something heavy. His mother came backstage and hugged him. "You were wonderful," she said. "Everyone loved it." His father was already showing him clips on the camera. "Look at this angle," he said. "You looked like a professional. This one's going viral for sure." Ethan nodded quietly, forcing a smile. But the noise around him faded. All he could hear was his own heartbeat. That night, after they got home, he lay in bed replaying the performance in his mind. He remembered every small mistake, every moment his hands shook. His parents were downstairs celebrating, answering messages and reading all the online comments praising him. People called him a musical miracle. They said he had the soul of an old master. But Ethan didn't feel like a miracle. He felt like a boy pretending to be someone else. The days after the recital were supposed to be a break. His mother promised he could rest for a few days, but by the third morning, she was already sitting beside the piano again. "We should start preparing for the next event," she said. "Momentum is important." Ethan stared at the keys, his fingers still sore. "Can we rest just a little longer?" he asked softly. His mother smiled but shook her head. "Resting too much makes you lose touch," she said. "You're talented, Ethan. You don't want to waste that, do you?" He didn't argue. He sat down and began to play, but something inside him was different now. He didn't look forward to the music anymore. Each note felt heavier than before. Soon, people started noticing small changes. His teachers at school said he seemed tired. During interviews, he looked quiet, almost distant. He rarely smiled naturally. His mother blamed it on nerves, saying he was just shy. His father said he was focused, but those who looked closely could see that the sparkle in his eyes was slowly fading. Then came the TV invitation. A major talk show wanted Ethan to perform live. It was supposed to be a huge opportunity, his biggest yet. His parents were thrilled. "This will show the world who you really are," his father said proudly. But Ethan didn't want to go. Something about the idea of playing live on national television filled him with dread. At home, he could redo takes. In concerts, the audience was far away. But on TV, every camera, every light, every eye would be fixed on him. He tried to explain his fear, but his parents told him it was normal. "Every great artist feels this," his mother said. "Once you start playing, the fear disappears." So he agreed. The day of the show, the studio was cold and bright. Producers rushed around giving directions. The stage lights were blinding. Ethan sat at the grand piano, his small feet barely touching the pedals. The host introduced him with excitement, calling him the youngest piano sensation in the country. The audience clapped loudly. He began to play. At first, everything went fine, but halfway through he felt something slip. His hand missed a note, then another. His heart started pounding. His fingers froze for a moment and silence filled the studio. It was only a second or two, but it felt endless. The audience waited quietly. Then his mother stepped from backstage and gently placed her hand on his shoulder, whispering something only he could hear. He started again, finishing the piece quickly. The applause came, but it felt awkward, hesitant. Afterward, online clips of the show spread fast. Some viewers praised his courage for continuing, but others noticed the strange moment when his mother came to the stage. They started asking questions. Was it really live? Did he forget the notes? Is he really playing all those songs himself? Whispers began to grow online. Music bloggers started investigating his performances. Some compared his live show to his earlier videos and noticed small differences. Timing that seemed too perfect, recordings that sounded slightly edited. A few even claimed the videos were mixed with studio sound. Ethan didn't know about any of this at first. His parents tried to hide the comments from him. But one evening, he overheard them arguing quietly in the kitchen. Words like fake, editing, and reputation floated through the doorway. He sat on the stairs listening, his heart sinking. For the first time, he wondered if the world's praise had never really been for him, but for an image his parents had built. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had played for years, and felt confused. Was his talent real, or had it all been shaped, polished, and presented to look perfect? That question would soon take over everything. Because once the whispers became headlines, the story of the young piano prodigy began to unravel, and the truth that came out would shock everyone, especially Ethan himself. For a while, Ethan's parents tried to pretend everything was fine. They told him not to worry about what people said online. "People always talk," his father said. "Ignore them. You just keep playing." His mother agreed, though her smile looked tighter than before. But the questions didn't stop. More videos appeared online comparing Ethan's performances. Viewers pointed out small things, how his hands didn't always match the sound, how some recordings seemed too smooth for a live performance. A few even claimed that certain clips had been edited to fix mistakes. At first, only a handful of people noticed. But within weeks, the rumors spread. Articles started showing up with titles like, "Is the young piano genius really playing live?" and "Behind the scenes of a child prodigy." Some called it jealousy. Others wanted answers. Ethan's parents avoided interviews for a while, saying they wanted to protect their son from unfair criticism. But that silence only made people more curious. Reporters began digging deeper, finding old clips, old posts, and even talking to people who had seen Ethan perform live. One night, Ethan was sitting on the couch, scrolling through videos on a tablet when he accidentally came across one titled, "The Truth About the Prodigy." He tapped it before realizing what it was. The video showed side-by-side clips of him performing. The narrator, a calm voice, pointed out how his hand movements didn't match the exact notes being heard. They replayed moments in slow motion, showing tiny differences, At the end, the voice said, "Maybe Ethan is talented, but maybe the truth isn't what we've been shown." Ethan's heart sank. He turned off the tablet quickly and just sat there staring into space. His hands trembled a little. He didn't know what to think. A few minutes later, his mother walked in and saw his face. "What happened?" she asked softly. He hesitated before whispering, "People think I'm not really playing." His mother froze. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Then she smiled, though it looked forced. "That's nonsense," she said. "You are playing. They just don't understand how much effort goes into it." But Ethan didn't feel convinced. He could hear something different in her voice, something that didn't sound like confidence. It sounded like fear. The next few weeks were chaos. Every morning there were new messages, new articles, new opinions. Some people defended Ethan, saying he was just a child being attacked unfairly. Others accused his parents of faking his talent for fame. Eventually, one music blogger claimed to have proof. He said he had spoken to a sound engineer who recognized certain recordings in Ethan's videos as pre-edited tracks. The blogger posted screenshots, audio comparisons, and detailed explanations. The story exploded online. Suddenly, the boy who was once praised as a prodigy became the center of controversy. TV hosts discussed him. People argued in comment sections. His videos received millions of views again, but this time, for all the wrong reasons, Ethan's parents tried to manage the situation. His father released a statement online saying, "Our son is a true musician. Yes, we polished some recordings, but only to highlight his talent. Every child needs a little help." The statement made things worse. People accused them of lying. Some said it was exploitation. The family started receiving hurtful messages, even threats. The same fans who once admired them now turned angry. Inside their home, the atmosphere changed completely. The piano that once filled the house with music now sat silent most of the time. His mother avoided looking at it. His father spent long hours on his phone, trying to handle calls from journalists and sponsors. Ethan didn't know how to feel. He wasn't angry at his parents, but he was confused and hurt. He had spent his whole life believing he was special because of his music. Now he wasn't sure what was real anymore. One night, while everyone else was asleep, he sat at the piano alone. The room was dark, lit only by the small lamp on the table. He pressed a few keys softly. The notes sounded honest, raw, and real. There were mistakes, yes, but for the first time in a long time, that didn't bother him. He closed his eyes and started playing. Not to prove anything, not to impress anyone, but just to feel. The sound filled the room gently. He played until tears rolled down his cheeks. He didn't even know why he was crying. Maybe it was sadness or guilt or simply relief that for once there were no cameras, no pressure, no pretending, just music. In the following days, reporters camped outside their home. The family barely went out. His parents argued often, whispering in the kitchen late at night. Ethan could hear fragments of their conversations, words like contract, reputation, money, and future. One afternoon, a journalist managed to talk to one of Ethan's old music teachers. The teacher admitted that while Ethan was indeed talented, his training was unusually intense and that his parents were highly controlling. The teacher said she had once suggested giving Ethan a break, but his parents refused. That interview became headline news. When Ethan saw it on TV, his stomach turned. He didn't like seeing his life discussed by strangers. People who had never met him were debating whether he was real or fake, gifted or manipulated. He wished he could just disappear. Then came the worst day of all. A popular news channel released a long documentary about the making of a modern prodigy. It included clips from his parents' old videos, interviews, and leaked audio files. The documentary ended with a music expert analyzing one of his most famous performances and concluding that the sound had clearly been altered. Overnight, the world stopped seeing Ethan as a genius. Now he was the boy behind the illusion. The internet can be cruel. Memes appeared. Jokes spread. His face was used in online posts mocking fake talent. He stopped going to school for a while because the whispers and stares became too much. Some kids asked him if he really ever played the piano at all. At home, his mother cried often. His father stayed quiet, his eyes distant. Everything they had built seemed to crumble. The sponsorships, the invitations, the praise, all gone in a matter of weeks. For Ethan, it wasn't fame he missed. It was the music. But every time he sat at the piano now, he felt a knot in his stomach. It reminded him of everything that had gone wrong. One afternoon, his grandmother came to visit. She hadn't seen him since the scandal broke. She hugged him gently, holding him longer than usual. "How are you, my boy?" she asked softly. Ethan shrugged. "Everyone thinks I'm fake." She looked at him, her eyes kind. "Do you think you're fake?" He hesitated. "I don't know," he whispered. "I practiced a lot. I tried my best. But if they change things, maybe it means I wasn't good enough." His grandmother took his hands in hers. "You were always enough," she said. "They just forgot that music isn't supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be real." Her words stayed with him. That night he went to the piano again. He played quietly, slowly, allowing himself to make mistakes. And for the first time in months he smiled while playing. Meanwhile, his parents began to realize how much they had pushed him. His father finally admitted that he edited the recordings because he wanted to protect Ethan from criticism. "I thought if we showed your best side, you'd be loved more," he confessed one evening. "I didn't mean to hurt you." His mother apologized too, tears in her eyes. "I just wanted you to have what I never did," she said softly. "I thought if you were perfect, people would never stop believing in you." Ethan listened quietly. He didn't know how to respond, but he understood something important that night. They hadn't done it out of cruelty. They had done it out of love, even if that love had gone too far. Still, the world wasn't ready to forgive so easily. The media moved on to other stories, but the damage lingered. Some people still called him a fraud. Others said he was a victim, but Ethan stopped reading what people wrote. He stopped watching the old videos. He decided to start from the beginning. He told his parents he wanted to learn again, properly, slowly, without pressure. Not for fame, not for the internet, not even for them, but for himself. His parents agreed. They sold the recording equipment, deleted his old accounts, and promised to let him play at his own pace. It wasn't easy at first. His hands felt stiff, his confidence shaken. But with time, he began to find joy in the music again. Each note became a small act of healing. The world had moved on, but Ethan was still there, quietly rebuilding himself, one melody at a time. He didn't know if he would ever be famous again, and he didn't care. All he wanted was to be honest, to play from the heart. And slowly, as he sat at the piano in the quiet of his home, something beautiful began to return. Not perfection, but peace. Years passed quietly after the storm faded. The cameras stopped showing up, the calls stopped coming, and the world moved on to new prodigies, new viral sensations, and new stories to chase. But for Ethan, the silence was not empty. It was healing. He was older now, taller, with calmer eyes that held a kind of quiet wisdom. The piano still stood in the corner of his living room, but it no longer felt like a burden. It was no longer a symbol of pressure or expectation. It was just what it was meant to be, an instrument. Every morning after breakfast, he would sit by it and play. Not for the world, not for fame, not even for his parents. He played for himself. Sometimes he'd spend hours just pressing keys softly, trying out new melodies that came from somewhere deep inside him. Other times, he'd close his eyes and let his fingers move without thinking, following the rhythm of his own breathing. There was a softness in his playing now, something real and raw that wasn't there before. He didn't care if he made mistakes. In fact, he welcomed them. Every wrong note reminded him that he was human, that he was learning, that music wasn't about being perfect. It was about feeling something. His parents had changed too. His mother no longer corrected him when he missed a note, and his father no longer recorded every session. They both learned to just listen. Sometimes they'd stand quietly by the door, watching him play with tears in their eyes, realizing how much they had almost taken away from him. One evening, as he finished playing a soft tune he had written himself, his mother asked gently, "What's that piece called?" He smiled and shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe I'll call it peace." She nodded slowly, understanding the meaning behind that word better than anyone else could. Over time, Ethan began to rediscover his love for music. He started teaching children at a small community center nearby. Most of them weren't rich, and many didn't even own their own instruments, but their eyes lit up every time they touched the piano keys. That excitement reminded him of the first time he fell in love with music, before everything became about perfection. He didn't tell the kids about his past. To them, He was just Mr. Ethan, the teacher who smiled a lot and told them that wrong notes were part of the story. He taught them that music was like talking. Sometimes you stumble, sometimes you pause, but as long as you keep expressing yourself, it's beautiful. One of his students, a shy little girl, asked him one day, "Were you ever scared to play?" Ethan looked at her and said honestly, "All the time. But the trick is to play anyway. The fear disappears once you start." His simple answer made her smile. That moment reminded him how powerful honesty could be. A few years later, when he was in his early 20s, a local journalist reached out. She wanted to do a follow-up story, not about the scandal, but about how he had moved on. At first, Ethan hesitated. He didn't want to reopen old wounds. But after thinking for a while, he realized maybe it was time to speak, not to defend himself, but to share what he had learned. When the interview day arrived, he wore a plain white shirt and sat in his small teaching room, surrounded by pianos with chipped paint and well-worn keys. The journalist asked softly, "Do you still think about what happened?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Sometimes, but not with anger anymore. I think it happened so I could understand what music really means. Back then, I played for approval. Now I play to connect." She asked, "Do you blame your parents?" He shook his head. "No. They were just lost in their own dreams. They thought they were helping me. It took us all time to understand that love and pressure don't mix well." Then she asked, "Do you still consider yourself a prodigy?" This time he laughed gently. "No, I think that word doesn't mean what people think it does. A prodigy isn't someone who plays perfectly. It's someone who finds joy in the sound. That's what makes it real." When the article was published, it didn't go viral. There were no headlines or debates this time. But for the people who read it, it touched something deep. The tone was humble and real. A boy once trapped by perfection had finally found his peace. Slowly, more people began reaching out. Parents, teachers, and even former child performers who said they related to his story. They thanked him for speaking openly about the pressure behind the word talent. Some said it helped them rethink how they treated their own children. That small ripple of truth was enough for him. He didn't want fame again. He just wanted honesty to spread. A few months later, he received an invitation from a local music festival. They asked if he would perform, not as a prodigy but as himself, a young musician who had rebuilt his relationship with music. At first, he wasn't sure if he could face an audience again. The thought of cameras and lights still made his stomach twist. But then he remembered something his grandmother once told him. "If you don't play your own story, someone else will play it for you." So he agreed. The day of the concert arrived. The small theater was filled with families, students, and a few familiar faces. His parents sat in the front row holding hands. The lights dimmed and Ethan walked onto the stage quietly. He sat down at the piano, took a deep breath, and looked out at the audience. For a moment, he didn't move. The silence stretched long enough for him to hear his heartbeat. Then he smiled, placed his fingers on the keys, and began to play. The music that came out wasn't perfect. He missed a few notes here and there, but it didn't matter. Every sound carried emotion, moments of struggle, moments of forgiveness, moments of peace. It wasn't about showing skill. It was about sharing truth. Halfway through the performance, he played the song he had called Peace. The soft melody filled the hall like a warm light. People listened in complete stillness, as if time had paused. By the time he finished, there were tears in more than a few eyes, including his own. When he stood up, the applause wasn't deafening. It was gentle, heartfelt. It felt real. After the concert, a young boy came up to him with wide eyes and said, "I want to play like you one day." Ethan smiled and replied, "Then play like yourself. That's even better." That night, as he walked home under the quiet glow of the streetlights, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace, not just with the music, but with himself. He realized that his story wasn't about being a prodigy at all. It was about being human. It was about the journey from pressure to freedom, from imitation to authenticity. He knew there would always be new prodigies, new viral stars, new kids being called geniuses before they even understood what that word meant. But he also knew that somewhere out there, maybe one of them would hear his story and realize that it's okay to be imperfect. That thought made him smile. As the years went on, Ethan continued to teach, compose, and play. His music slowly found its way online again, not through flashy edits or viral clips, but through small videos posted by his students. They filmed him teaching, laughing, and sharing stories. The world saw a different kind of musician, one who had once been broken by fame but rebuilt himself through honesty. People started leaving comments like, "This is what real music feels like," and "There's so much heart in every note." One day, during an interview on a small local podcast, the host asked him, "If you could go back in time and change anything, would you?" Ethan paused for a long moment before answering. "Maybe I would have asked to be heard instead of shown off," he said softly. "But then again, if I hadn't gone through it all, I wouldn't know what real music means, so no, I wouldn't change a thing." He smiled as he said it, and the host could tell he meant it. By the end of the podcast, he played one last short piece, simple, slow, and full of feeling. The host sat in silence when he finished. "That," she said quietly, "was beautiful." Ethan smiled again. That's what music's supposed to be. As he left the studio that evening, the sun was setting behind the buildings, and for a moment, the sky looked golden. He stood there for a while, watching it, feeling grateful. Not for the fame he once had, but for the peace he now carried. He had learned the hardest lesson of all, that true talent isn't about how many people applaud, or how many views you get, or how perfect your performance looks. True talent is when your heart and your art become the same thing, and as long as there was a piano in front of him and a story to tell through the keys, Ethan knew he would keep playing, not for approval, but for truth. Because after everything, that was what they didn't want people to know, that behind every so-called prodigy there's just a person searching for meaning, for honesty, for connection. And once Ethan found that, he never needed the title prodigy again. He had found something far more powerful: himself.